Welcome to the Smart Personal Finance Podcast, a show dedicated to providing you insights and ideas to help you live a better life right now while building plans for financial freedom. I'm your host, Renaud Gagne, and this one is about budgeting. Now, let me get started with one of my favorite quote out there. It's from Carl Pearson, and some people call it Pearson Law because it's so effective and so true that some people call it a law, and it goes like this. That which is measured improves. That which is measured and tracked improve exponentially. Now, in personal finance, just like in life, there are really few absolute, but there are core fundamentals that we ignore at our perils. And one of those fundamentals is the concept of budgeting. Now, here I'm talking about budgeting in the broadest sense possible. I'm not limiting the word only to mean the way we budget our finances. I'm going to be galloping through during this whole podcast about this concept and show you how this idea can truly impact every single sphere of your life and actually help you live a better life right now while building a plan for financial freedom. Now, what is budgeting? Budgeting, as we understand it, most of us is about measuring, tracking, allocating something. In personal finances, our money. And in personal finance, it's very easy because it's money. It's easily quantifiable. But now, let's take this concept outside of the financial world. Imagine for a second an Olympic athlete. Would it be conceivable for him or her not to measure, track, and plan what they're going to eat? Or what's their training going to be? Or imagine someone who's at the hospital going through treatment. Would it be imaginable for the doctors and nurses not to have a way to measure, track, and allocate the dosage of drug? Of course not. So here we can see that budgeting can apply beyond the sphere of finances. And I contend that I believe we should be using this idea to actually create three main budgets in our lives. So why three budget, Renaud? I can't barely keep track of one, you might say. Well, that's because I think there are more important things in life than money. Just stay with me here, and I think you'll understand where I'm going. And those three budgets, I'll put them in order of importance. And I would say the essential things in life to budget are time. Second place, food and exercise. And in third place, money. Now, just a little disclaimer here. I didn't come up with this idea. It's Gary North who introduced that concept on his website a long time ago. Why in this particular order? Well, let's start with time. Why time would be in first place? Time is the stuff of life. Time is this mysterious thing we use that we can never get back. When someone comes to the end, they don't think of how they wish they had saved more money or made more money, or they think of the time they should have spent with their loved ones or their kids, their families, or their friends. The way we budget our time will impact everything, from our relationship with our spouse to how successful we're going to be at our job or at our business. And this is a very interesting exercise, and I invite you to try it for maybe a week. And that's one of the process I went through is if you were to track for a few days everything you do during the day in terms of time. Every time you're about to do something, you start tracking it. You would be surprised how much time you're spending on things that you do not particularly care for. I'm going through this and I'm realizing, wow, I spend so much time on this phone, or just kind of wandering around, or just, pretending I'm being productive here when it's actually wasting my time. And if you consider that the average American spend an hour and 15 minutes every day on social media, that's almost 19 days per year spent scrolling on a desktop or a mobile device. So what could those 19 days be better used for? That's a good question. Now, food and exercise is another biggie, and that's another one. I had a big change lately in my life. What we put into our bodies and what we do with it will have an impact on our state of mind, our energy level, and our longevity, even the amount of time we'll have. So, for example, in my life, I just got a new phone, and I got a new phone because I broke mine when I was moving a piano, and it just completely bent in half, and it was bad. But I got this new phone for cheap, and what was included on it was a pedometer, and it just counts my steps every day. But just this simple number showing up on my screen made me realize, wait a second, I'm not walking nearly enough. And the reality of my situation is that I work from home, right? I work from home, and a lot of the things I do is from my office. So I'm not walking around downtown Montreal. I'm not, I barely go outside. I don't have a lot of incentives to go walking around. But after doing a little bit of research, they said, well, if you're walking less than 6,000 steps per day, you're considered sedentary, and it's really not good for your health. So you need at least 6,000 steps just to stay at basic shape. So because of that, I realized, okay, well, I'm going to go for a walk in the morning and a walk at night, and that way I get my 6,000 steps. Thanks to this little widget on my phone, I brought a daily walk into my life. And on the short term, it may not have a big impact. I may not have any impact. But over my lifespan, it may mean the difference between good health and bad health. You get what I mean? Well, now we finally get to the third element, which is money budget. And it does play a crucial part in our lives. Being in debt is stressful. And realizing that we don't have enough money to retire can really be stressful and depressing. So I believe that the more you apply budgeting into your finances, the more successful at every area of finance you will be. Now let's go through a progression of how a budget is created and implemented. I would say it all starts with getting clear about your goals. How intense you have to budget will be defined by one thing, your goals. The clearer you are about your goals, the clearer your plan is going to be. If you plan to retire in 40 years, your plan, how you're going to implement this plan is going to be radically different than if you're in a situation where you want to retire in 10 years or less. If you want to become an Olympic athlete, your plan is going to be really different than if you just want to maintain your health. And there's not one better than the other. It's all individual. It's all subjective. But we have to be clear about what is it that we're going for. Now, the second we know what our goals and we're clear about them, the next step we have to go into is to bring awareness into the situation. So, and that's where tracking comes into play. How much awareness do you need? Well, it all depends on your goals. That's why that's number one. So let's take the example of someone who's in debt. Let's say the goal is to get out of debt as quickly as possible. Now, the first thing that this person would have to do is to start tracking every single income and expense. They can't work on projection or estimates. Every single income and expenditure has to be put into the tracker. But on the other hand, if you're a multimillionaire, you may not need to have that level of detail. You might just need kind of like broad parameters for yourself, along maybe with a bookkeeper every month telling you, hey, are you on track or are you not? But let's say you're a multimillionaire, you want to become a billionaire. Well, that's completely different. Now you're going to be having to bring much more awareness into the budget. Now, the next step, I believe, is to do proactive action with appropriate level of control. And what I mean by control is also constraint. And that's what people attach budgeting to. The budget is synonymous with constraint, which is partially true. If a budget doesn't bring us back in control of what we're budgeting, all we're doing is noticing what's happening. And there's some benefit to that, but it's not proactive and it doesn't put us back completely in control of what's happening. And how much control you need, again, always depends on your situation. If you're already saving 20% of your income, you're debt-free, and you want to retire in 40 years, well, you don't have to have an excessive level of control over your system. But let's take, for example, you're someone who's deeply in debt, like we had the first example for awareness. So, of course, you have tracking, but another crucial part of taking control of your finance is to stop all automatic payments. Cancel anything that's not absolutely necessary, and to exert a really high level of control over what's happening financially. That may mean canceling or freezing their credit card, using only cash into envelopes, like David Ramsey teaches, and and not spend any more than what's allocated within those envelopes. Like sometime you need to take radical control when things are out of whack. And it always depends on what are your goals and where you're at. And, these are all things that are particular to you. And the final step, I believe, is to start with big rocks. And what I mean by big rocks, you can always go onto, you can go on the show notes for this show, and it's smartpersonalfinance.ca/1. That's going to bring you to the show notes, and you just have to scroll down, and you're going to see this video 3/4 down the article. And the video is about Stephen Covey, and he's doing this presentation with this woman where she's a high power executive and shows, okay, well, these are the small rocks, these are like little menial tasks that happens during the day, and then you have those medium rocks and you have those big rocks, and he starts with the small rocks, and they can't fit everything in there, but when she starts with the big rock, then she can fit this the medium rock, and then she can fill in the smaller rocks, and then finally, when they even think they don't have any more place, they just add water, and it's completely full, and you can fit much more by starting with the big stuff. So that's where I would be very different from what's his name again, David. Mr. Bach, who talks about the latte effect, right? So, well, you just got to start by cutting your $5 latte or your $2 coffee per day at Tim Hortons. Well, I think that's not a big rock. Actually, maybe it's that $300 phone and internet bill that you have every month. Maybe you're overpaying on your car insurance. Maybe it's that $800 food bill that you're having at Costco every month. the fixed cost and the big items of expenses will have such a bigger impact on your budget than the little things that are spent here and there, because those are particularly in your control. And then, of course, you can move on to the smaller things later to optimize. But it's like the 80-20 rules. There's about 20% of your expenses that represent 80% of them. So I would say tackle the big rocks when you need to get into control of either your time, your food, or your money. And that's the big picture. And I think we have to start where we are right now. And sometimes it's just the next thing that we have to tackle. So in personal finance, the big four would be, of course, your housing cost. And then you had food, which would be a big cost, transportation. And then you would have utilities. And these are the big four that actually account for the bigger chunk, the bigger piece of the pie of your budget. And these are the place where we should be thinking, okay, can I reduce my housing costs? Should I be moving close to my work so that I don't need a car to get to work? And that way I can reduce a car payment. I can maybe find a cheaper apartment there. And what about my phone and internet bill? Is there a way to use VoIP, internet for my phone and reduce my bill? Should I use a pay-as-you-go system? And these are all things that we're going to talk about in the podcast in the future. But these are the big rocks of our financial lives. Now, moving ahead, this is the final step of this podcast. I'm going to be talking about the tools that I found really useful to track and to help manage either our money or time or food. And there's a wide range of very useful tools out there. And I have my particular preference, but when it comes to the money question of budgeting, I think I went through all of them. And the best one I found, the one that actually worked for me, was one called YNAB. And YNAB stands for You Need a Budget. And I don't make any affiliate commission, okay? Or I don't make any bonus, or I'm just giving you this completely free. It's not my stuff, but it really transformed the way I manage money. Because all the other system that I know of helps you track, yes. It helps you budget, but usually it always work in a projection. You're projecting your expense. You're projecting your income, and then you go on tracking. You realize I'm out of whack here. But YNAB starts completely the other way, and it's especially good if you have variable income. It starts with a concept that you have to give every dollar a job. So you only work with money that you already have. You don't work with future money. You take whatever is in your account right now, and you give every dollar a job until you get paid again. And next paycheck, you do the same thing. You allocate all the way down to having a budget that goes to zero, so that every single dollar has a job until you get paid again. And once you are able to fill in your months, your current month, you can start budgeting for future expense for next month and the second month, or maybe even 3 months ahead. And it's extremely powerful because it's very flexible. So as you go out about spending your money, you realize, I overspend in this category. Where should I move this category? It's like almost an envelope system, but digital. So I can't rave enough about it. I will probably make an entire episode about YNAB. I highly suggest it. And if you're looking for the link, go on Google, You Need a Budget, or you can find the link on my website in the show notes. And also, big suggestion about them, they give a lot of education. They have lots of webinars. They're really, really helpful. yeah, I can't rave about enough about this particular tool for budgeting. Now, if you're using something else and it's working for you, just don't go about changing your whole system because you heard about the shiny new thing. If you have years of experience with Mint, don't give up. Just keep on going. Keep on. If it's working for you, don't change. Don't fix what is not broken. Now, when it comes to time, I've been experimenting with Toggl, Toggl, and what it helps me is to track my hours, and especially when you work from home, you really need to. It's a very important thing to do to know where your time is spent. And Toggl has desktop app, native apps, you name it, and it's very well done. I have a free option, and it might be a very enlightening thing to do to start tracking what is it that you do during your day. And finally, when it comes to food, I actually have to rely to you guys because I've been trying a whole bunch of different apps and I find them a little bit cumbersome, and I haven't found the perfect solution for food because it seems to be working really well when you have package, like you can just scan the barcode. But when you eat a lot of, bulk food, then it's kind of difficult to go, how many grams of beans is this? I don't have a scale to check how many grams of beans I have in front of me. So if you have any idea of how to track food and exercise better than me, please leave it in the comment section on the show notes page. I'll be really, really appreciative. So we come to the end of this episode. I'm sure there's much more I could be talking about budgeting and advanced ideas about it. But for today, I would stop it here and invite you to go onto the website, leave a comment in the show notes, go through the financial quiz I created. It can be really helpful to give you a scorecard. You'll probably find it on the right inside of the website, or you can go to smartpersonalfinance.ca/scorecard. And it will help you evaluate where are you at in what actually you're doing with your financial plan. And finally, if you have any questions, if you would like me to answer your question, just go and send me a message in the contact page. Of course, I'm not to divulge any information that you don't want me to share. I'm going to ask you for your permission. If ever you have a really good question that would be very useful for other people, I would be very happy to talk with you and to hear your questions so that I can answer them. And as always, the information contained here and all the communication on the website of the podcast is for information purpose only. We do not provide legal or financial advice. The Smart Personal Finance podcast, what we do is we provide financial education, and it's up to you, the reader, the listener, the student, to make your own decision or to consult an advisor when evaluating what has been said. Now, thank you so much for listening. I'm going to be coming next to you with another episode. I'm really excited. And until then, signing off.